welcome to Heart of a Husband. Thanks again for joining me. This is Paul, your host. I'm excited to dig in this week with you. Last episode, we talked about how you're not weak, you're just worn out. Like, don't beat yourself up, don't feel shame, but find a way to yoke yourself to Jesus. Find your way to step into his rest. But this week, I want to talk about how to show up when you are running on empty. You know, I think that we're always going to find times in our lives that we are running on empty. I know the feeling because it literally feels like metal rubbing against metal or bone against bone. I can feel it. It's like a grating feeling. And sorry, Cindy, but whenever I feel this way and my wife starts asking me to do anything, it could be the most simple thing like, hey, would you mind? That's all she's got to say. Hey, would you mind? And I immediately feel PTSD. Like, I cannot do one more thing. I cannot be asked to do one more thing. And it's kind of silly, but it's because I'm running on empty. I have nothing in me left to give. I have nothing in me left to pour out. And so guys, today we want to talk about how do we continue to show up even though we are running on empty. You know, I think it's important for us to be honest with ourselves in these moments. You know, because last episode, we talked about the pressure that we feel to perform, the pressure that we feel to show up and to hold it all together. And even though we feel empty, we're still needed. And so, again, this isn't a matter of you not loving your wife, not loving your kids. Of course you love your wife. Of course you love your kids. If you didn't care about being a better husband, one, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. So, and again, thanks for listening. And if you would, subscribe and follow. And if you're not watching on YouTube, could you log in and subscribe there too? Sorry, I just used that as a real quick plug for subscribing to Heart of a Husband. Thanks so much for listening. But I think that in these moments where we feel like we're empty, we feel like we don't have enough to give. And honestly, you might not, you know, but the reality is that your family is primary to the other things. So you can't just be like, I'm not going to be your dad today. I'm not going to be your husband today. I give up. I quit. You know, sometimes we do that. You know, a lot of times, guys, some of you guys may have said, hey, I've done that, Paul. I've left. You know, we're back together now. Or maybe you're like, I left and I didn't, but I don't want to do that again. That's why I'm listening. I know there's been seasons where I've completely disconnected emotionally and sometimes even physically. Like, I'm getting in my car and I go because I'm so empty that I can't give anymore. But I think it's important for you to remember that you're not pulling back because you don't care. You're pulling back because you do. You need to give yourself some space to rest. And I think that, I think there's a way, again, that we show up in these moments simply to say, I don't have much, but I'm still here. Like, I love you, but I just don't have anything left to give. But I think it's important for us to analyze what it is that we're giving that's got us so beat and worn out. Like, again, back to last episode, what have we yoked ourselves to that Jesus isn't asking us to be yoked to? Because if it's pulling us and it's taking things from us and it's emptying us in a way that we don't have anything left to give once we're home, we've got to get that figured out. And again, the answer always is take it to Jesus. You know, I think that we as men think that if we felt better, we'd show up better. But the problem, just like the task list never ends, what happens when you don't feel any better tomorrow or the next day or the next day? What if you continue to not feel better because you're not getting the rest, you're not being honest about where you're at or how you're showing up in the different places, so you actually never feel better, which means you can never actually show up in the way that you want to show up. But I think it's important to remember God works through weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, but he said to me, Jesus, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. That reminds me of a chapter in the book. It's kind of cheesy, and some of you guys won't really know what I'm talking about, but I'm from the 1900s, so this is kind of a 1900s story. But when I was a kid, there was this old cartoon. I think that was, you know, from when my parents were kids. It was called Popeye, and he was kind of this puny little sailor man that had a girlfriend named Olive Oil. And anyway, he was always like, he was kind of a defender of the weak, right? He would always like take care of those who were being mistreated or misused. But he wasn't super strong. So the big bullies would always kind of think they could beat him up, but then he would eat some spinach. And when he ate the spinach, this was a conspiracy to get kids to eat their spinach in the 50s. But he would eat the spinach, then he would grow these big muscles, and then he'd be really strong, and he would beat up the bad guy. And so in the book, I equate God's power being made perfect in my weakness to him and spinach. My weakness is the spinach. And so again, that's kind of cheesy, but you can check it out, heartofahusband.com, find the book, you can read it. Well, this show's becoming an endless promo. I'm just playing. Anyway, so his strength, his power is made perfect in your weakness. That ought to bring you hope. You're like, man, I feel weak. No. His power is made perfect in your weakness. His grace is sufficient for you. Can you accept that? Can you accept that his grace is sufficient, that his power is made perfect in your weakness, that your weakness isn't a liability, it's a meeting place for the Lord. He meets you there in your weakness. You know, we talked a little bit about this last episode because we have this tendency to withdraw. We have a tendency to withdraw. I know I do. It's like I disappear. And how does that look in your life? Does it look like silence, just no response at all? Does it look like you're distracting yourself? Are you on your phone, ignoring your wife, ignoring your kids, ignoring yourself, just feeding the pain? Are you irritable? That's probably me. Like I withdraw through irritability. I get irritated. You know, most men are very loyal to their family. I would say that most of you guys are very loyal. Everything you do is for your family. And you've told yourself, I work this hard for my family to provide. I have to do this because I have to provide for my family. I serve at the church because I have to show them how it's done. I lead in this way because I want my kids to grow up to be great leaders. You've somehow justified burning yourself out. Most men don't leave. They fade. Over time, they fade because they're just overextended, overworked, and they just don't have anything more to give. It gets to a place where withdrawal feels safer than presence. Because when you're empty, that definitely feels that way. If I'm empty, it's way easier to be away from everyone than it is to be present for people because I feel like I don't have anything left to offer. What's interesting is that distance is most often created by absence, not conflict. So really, the distance happens when we disappear. I think sometimes I show up to my house and I think somehow I project myself onto everyone else. So I'm feeling a certain way. So then I think everyone else is feeling a certain way. So then I justify not being around anyone, which then creates this thing where they start feeling the very way that I think they feel, even though they weren't feeling that. Distance is often created by absence, not conflict. Remember that. So I want to challenge you guys that you don't have to feel the pressure to show up strong. Just show up honest. And you know what? That could be hard at first because if your wife's not used to you being honest, she's not going to know how to handle it. She's going to probably be thinking, what's going on right now? What's wrong with him? And you haven't done it, so you're having the opportunity just to be honest and trust someone with the truth about you. Trust someone with what you're going through and how you're feeling. And they may not respond the way that they are supposed to. They may not respond the way you want them to, and it doesn't really matter what their response is. The truth of the matter is that you have to be, first of all, honest with yourself, honest with God, and honest with your family. You can stay present without having to perform. You can be present without having to pour out more. You know, Galatians 6:9 says, let's not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. Don't give up. You may feel like giving up right now. You're like, I can't do it anymore, Paul. But then I would point you back to finding rest in him, taking the deep breath. Literally, figuratively, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, all of the above. Take the breath. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to challenge you to choose one daily moment of presence. Just say to yourself in these moments, I don't have much, but I'm here. Even if you have to say that out loud to your wife, you know, I don't have much, or find a way to show up in the moments and just tell yourself, I don't have a lot right now, but I'm going to show up in this. I'm going to show up in this moment. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be present. Presence doesn't have to be big to be meaningful. I think you have to know that. Like, I feel like I've got to make this big moment. Like, oh, it's got to be the big moment so that my kids will know that I really love them and I really care. I've got to make sure that I show up in this big way. And I've learned over the years, especially with my wife, that just being in the same room is good enough sometimes. Just being together, no words, no big activity. We don't have to play games. We don't have to do a puzzle. Just being in the same room, her doing her thing, I'm doing my thing, just being there. Your presence matters. And guys, like I said earlier, you're faithful men. You're faithful. You keep showing up in all the places. You're probably more faithful to everyone else than you are to yourself. And you don't have to be completely full to be faithful to your wife, to be faithful to your kids, to show up in the areas that they need you. But you also have to know where the line's at. Be honest about it. Like, I don't have a lot right now. I don't have a lot to give. So I want to encourage you these next weeks, this next couple of weeks, just choose a daily moment of presence with your wife, with your kids. Choose a moment. Just say, I'm going to show up in this space. It could be something small, like, oh, I'm going to go over there and help make dinner. I'm going to help do the dishes. I'm just going to sit down next to my wife on the couch and hold her hand. I'm going to sit down on the floor and watch my kid play. I don't even have the energy. I can remember when I had littles, there'd be nights I'd get home. I didn't even have the energy to play. I just would lay in the floor and watch them play, but I was present. You don't have to be full to offer a little bit of yourself in some way. Just being there is good enough. Remember that God, His strength is perfected in your weakness. So if you're feeling super weak, His strength is perfect in that. Again, thanks so much for listening. I'm going to pray for you. And if you would, pray for me. God, thanks for these men. They're weak. They feel weak. They feel tired. They feel worn out. They're exhausted. They've poured and poured and poured and poured and poured, and they're empty. They don't feel like they have anything left to give. But I pray that you would encourage them that whatever they have is good enough to show up with. That you are the perfecter of their faith. That you are strong and they're weak. That's okay. I just pray that we would depend on you, that we would lean on you, that we would yoke ourselves to you, that you would help us how to show up even in the small ways, in ways that don't feel like metal rubbing on metal, ways that don't feel like I can't do one more thing, but knowing that we can, that just when we make ourselves available to be, it's good enough. I pray that you would help us to see ourselves correctly, that we will remember that we're sons, and that your heart for us is to be healthy and whole. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thanks so much for joining me this week. Again, if you would subscribe, like, comment. I'd love to hear from you. Post if you follow on Instagram, comment. I'd love to hear from you. Hey, I listened to the podcast. Just find us online at heartofahusband.com. And until next time, continue to love your wife like Christ loves the church.